The 54-year-old former Army sniper sitting in 17A was staring out at the thin blue line of the horizon when the captain's voice cracked over the intercom, mid-sentence, like someone had cut the wire. What happened in the cockpit next was something no checklist in the world had ever prepared for. The flight was United 1429, a Boeing 737-800 out of Chicago O'Hare bound for Seattle, carrying 181 passengers and 6 crew. It was supposed to be routine. But at 34,000 feet over the empty stretch of Wyoming sky, the impossible had already begun. Before we go any further, drop a comment below. What state are you watching from? I read every single one, and if this is the kind of story you came here for, subscribe. There are more coming. Marcus Hale looked exactly like what people expected him to be. A quiet, broad-shouldered man in a faded Carhartt jacket, salt and pepper beard, the kind of guy who probably fixed trucks for a living. He kept to himself, nursing a black coffee and occasionally touching the worn dog tag he wore under his shirt, the one with his old call sign etched on the back. The flight attendant, a polite woman named Rachel, smiled as she passed. "Everything all right, sir? You look like you've done this route before." Marcus offered a small nod. "Few times, never as a passenger, though." She laughed gently. "Well, you're in good hands. Captain Reeves has been flying this bird for 18 years. Marcus smiled back, but inside, the old voice was already whispering, 18 years doesn't mean anything when the sky decides to change the rules. He settled deeper into the seat, eyes closing for a moment. The dog tag felt warm against his chest. The same one he'd carried through 3 tours, the one his spotter, Tommy Ruiz, had pressed into his hand the day everything went quiet in the Hindu Kush. "You ever need to see farther than the rest of them," Tommy had said. "This'll remind you how." Back then, it had been about distance and patience. Now it was just a piece of metal, or so he thought. The knowledge had come to Marcus in pieces, never in a classroom. He remembered the old hangar in Germany years after his last confirmed kill, when the army still needed snipers who could double as extract specialists. Master Sergeant Lena Voss had taken him under her wing after a bad night op. She wasn't a pilot, but she'd flown enough medevacs and cargo runs to know what mattered when metal met trouble. "You think this is about shooting, Hale?" She'd said one freezing dawn, grease on her hands, pointing at the stripped-down Black Hawk systems. "This is about listening. The machine talks. Most people just don't know the language." She taught him because she had lost her own son to a preventable mechanical failure in Afghanistan. Love and grief made her patient. Marcus asked her once while they sat on the tarmac eating cold MREs, "When the hell am I ever going to need to know how to read a standby attitude indicator with half the panel dark?" Lena had looked at him for a long time. "The day nobody else can, and you'll wish you didn't." That memory lived in him now, layered under years of civilian life, guiding hunters through Montana backcountry, teaching patience to kids who thought the woods were just scenery. Most passengers on this flight would never guess the man in 17A could name every redundant hydraulic line on this 737 by feel. Here's something most people don't realize about commercial jets. Even with modern fly-by-wire systems, there's a mechanical backup cable system that runs like old piano wire through the airframe. It's there for the exact moment computers decide they've had enough. Few civilians ever learn how to trim those cables manually at altitude. Fewer still practice it in a simulator that shakes like it's coming apart. Marcus had. The first sign came as a subtle shift in the engine note. Nothing dramatic, just a half-beat hesitation in the low hum that had been constant since takeoff. Marcus opened his eyes. No one else seemed to notice. The cabin was calm, in that specific way only 6 miles above the earth can feel. Late afternoon light painted the clouds gold below them. A young mother in 14D was showing her daughter how to draw mountains on a napkin. An older man in 22 degrees Fahrenheit, a retired teacher heading to his granddaughter's wedding, was quietly practicing his toast under his breath. In the cockpit, Captain Reeves and First Officer Lang were trading quiet jokes about Lang's upcoming wedding. Everything normal, everything fine, until it wasn't. Marcus noticed the second anomaly, a faint yaw to the left, barely perceptible, like the plane had sighed. He glanced toward the forward galley. Rachel was still smiling at passengers, but her hand lingered on the bulkhead a second too long. Not everything that looks fine is fine. The break came in stages. First, the captain's voice returned over the speakers, but tighter now. "Folks, we've got a minor pressurization issue. Nothing to worry about, but we're going to descend to 28,000 feet as a precaution." Marcus felt it in his ears before the announcement finished. Then the cockpit door opened briefly as a flight attendant rushed forward. When it closed, the silence that followed was wrong. Stage 2 arrived when the seatbelt sign chimed on, hard. Passengers shifted, a few nervous laughs. Then the plane rolled slightly, not turbulence. A deliberate correction that felt heavy. Marcus unbuckled quietly. He knew what oxygen mask dropping early really meant. In the cockpit, things had gone from procedure to prayer. Captain Reeves was slumped forward, unresponsive, face pale. First Officer Lang, only 800 hours in type, was fighting to maintain control while declaring an emergency. The autopilot had disengaged after a cascading electrical fault triggered by the initial pressurization failure. They were now hand-flying a heavy jet with partial instrument loss over jagged mountain terrain as night approached. Marcus stood in the aisle. Rachel tried to guide him back. "Sir, please return to your seat." He looked at her, calm but absolute. "I need to get to the cockpit, now." The resistance came exactly as he expected. Lang's voice, through the cracked door, was strained. "Sir, I appreciate the offer, but we have protocols." Marcus didn't raise his voice. "Your captain is down. You're losing hydraulic pressure on the right side. I can see it in the way she's handling. I flew extraction birds for 12 years. I know the standby systems on this airframe. They let him in only after Lang's attempted go-around maneuver nearly overstressed the wing. The demonstration was simple. Marcus reached across, named the exact circuit breaker that would isolate the faulty bus without killing the remaining instruments, and flipped it. The plane steadied under his touch. Lang stared. "Who the hell are you?" "Somebody who listened when it mattered," Marcus said quietly. He slipped into the captain's seat. The dog tag swung free as he moved, catching the red emergency lights. A little girl in the front row had started crying when the plane first dipped. Her sound carried through the open door like a reminder of every life on board. "Stay with me here. Because what happens in the next few minutes is the part nobody talks about. And once you hear it, you won't be able to forget it." Marcus gripped the yoke. His hands didn't shake, but he felt the old familiar dryness in his mouth. The same one from Overwatch positions where one breath could mean the difference. "Listen to the machine," Lena's voice said in his head. The situation was worse than Lang had admitted. Partial electrical failure meant no autothrottle, degraded flight controls, and weather building ahead. Embedded thunderstorms they couldn't climb over. They had one shot at an emergency diversion into Billings, Montana. Step by step, Marcus talked Lang through it. "Trim her nose down 2 degrees. Feel that? That's the aircraft telling you she's heavy, but honest." They worked together, Marcus flying, Lang handling radio and checklists. Then the crisis inside the crisis hit. The left generator dropped offline completely. Warning lights flooded the panel. The plane wanted to roll. Marcus didn't reach for the manual. He remembered something Lena had shown him in that freezing hangar. Sometimes you fly with your bones. He reduced power asymmetrically, used rudder like a scalpel, the way he'd once adjusted for crosswinds in dusty LZs. It worked, barely. In the middle of it, Lang's voice cracked. "I don't know if I can do this." Marcus glanced over. For one heartbeat, everything outside the cockpit disappeared. He put a hand on the younger man's shoulder. Just a brief squeeze. "You're not doing it alone. Breathe with the plane, son." That small touch, that tenderness in the middle of mechanical hell, passed between them like a lifeline. The approach into Billings was the longest 8 minutes of Marcus's life. Every call-out stretched. The runway lights appeared through broken clouds like distant stars. The prophetic words returned as the wheels kissed pavement, harder than they should have. The day nobody else can. The plane stopped safely. Something small still went wrong. A blown tire on rollout. But 187 people walked off alive. The silence after engines spooled down was deeper than any Marcus had known. His hands shook only once the parking brake was set. Lang looked at him like he was seeing a ghost. "You saved us." Rachel brought water. Passengers later described the quiet way Marcus sat on the stairs of the jet bridge afterward, just staring at his boots, the dog tag still in his fingers. The retired teacher from 22 degrees Fahrenheit approached later in the terminal, voice thick. "I was writing my toast when it happened. I thought about my granddaughter the whole time. Thank you." Official reports called it pilot incapacitation and exceptional passenger assistance. They never mentioned the sniper, who once waited 3 days for one shot, now waiting for his hands to stop remembering the yoke. Weeks later, Marcus stood in that same old German hangar with Lena Voss. She was grayer now, slower, but her eyes were the same. "You did the thing we practiced for," she said. He nodded. "Didn't feel like practice up there." Lena touched his arm. "The question isn't whether you were ready, Marcus. It's whether any of us ever are. We carry what we can. The sky takes the rest." I want you to think about this. When the moment comes that demands more than you think you have, do you step forward because you're qualified, or do you become qualified the second you stand up? If this story moved you, I have more where this came from. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And leave a comment below telling me which moment in this story stayed with you. I genuinely want to know. Some men spend their whole lives aiming at targets they can see. A few learn how to fly when the whole world goes dark.